Hello and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things weddings. I'm Megan and I own a wedding planning business here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And today we are going to talk about the 6 steps to jumpstart your wedding planning. And I wanted to do this video because I recently came across a blog that I had written for a florist website a few years ago and was reading through the blog that I had put together and the 6 steps that I had put together. And I was like, you know what? These feel pretty relevant. In terms of the steps to follow, overarching steps. I mean, it can get a lot more nitty gritty, but these are definitely the overarching steps to help you plan your wedding without feeling overwhelmed like you have to do everything all at once. So we're gonna get started on that, and I am definitely doing this selfie style right now because I sprained my ankle about 3 hours ago and I'm in a lot of pain, but I can't let that get in the way of filming another video and trying to stay committed to putting out regular content. So without further ado, the first of the 6 steps to jumpstart your wedding planning would be put your guest list pen to paper. Your guest list influences almost every area of your wedding planning. Picking your venue, catering, that influences how many flower arrangements are needed, all those sorts of things. And if you book a wedding venue that's not gonna fit what your estimated guest count is, then you're kind of gonna run into some issues. So I definitely recommend putting your guest list pen to paper. And on average, I'd say about 20 to 30% of guests RSVP no. You know, if you have a destination wedding of some sort, traveling of any kind, that percentage could be a little bit higher. It's been a little bit difficult to kind of, I guess, predict what the actual number will be kind of post-COVID. A lot of guests have just been, you know, up for making a vacation out of a travel wedding, that sort of thing. So take it with a grain of salt, but usually about 20 to 30%, I would say, don't attend. But you know your guests better than I do. So yeah, but definitely having a good solid estimate of what your actual guest count will be is extremely helpful when you start with booking your venue first and foremost, getting that date locked in, getting that venue locked in. But then it's also going to help you with other areas like what can you afford catering wise, what fits into your budget, because obviously catering for 200 guests is gonna be a lot more than 100, and whether that's buffet, stations, plated is also really gonna affect it. Like, you know, you could have a plated dinner for 70 that's gonna be potentially less expensive than a buffet for 200. So that's definitely gonna affect how you divvy up your budget and the decisions that you make and things to be looking out for and getting proposals on. Now, the second step to jumpstarting your wedding planning is to set your budget. And I think this kind of simultaneously hand in hand with figuring out what your guest count is, because you do want to try to have your budget set as best as possible when you are booking your venue, because a lot of times your venue is one of the highest areas of the wedding budget, if not the highest. It kind of varies, but you definitely want to have your budget in mind. And I recommend definitely reaching out to wedding planners, wedding coordinators in your area now before even booking anything, just to be getting an idea of, you know, what are the market averages in your area. A lot of wedding coordinators and wedding planners will do a free consultation to kind of give you some of this insight and help you make the decisions that are right for you, in hopes that you'll go and work with them in the future, near future. But I definitely recommend doing some research so you have a realistic idea of what you can do with your wedding budget for what your expectations are and what you are hoping to achieve. So definitely setting your budget is very important. I know it's a little bit different for everyone. For some, it's like this is kind of a little bit of a loose budget. It's a hard budget at this capacity, you know, all that sort of thing. But definitely having at least a threshold and budget range in mind of what you're hoping to spend, and, you know, educating yourself on what things cost in the market of the bridal world or wedding industry is definitely only going to help you better be able to make decisions on your venue, on your catering, on your photographer, florist, all those sorts of things, and kind of help you prioritize what is most important to you. Which leads us to our third step to jumpstart your wedding planning. I usually try to understand like what are the 3 top most important areas of the wedding to each couple that I'm working with. You know, is that catering? Is that the DJ? Is it the flowers? Do I not care about the food? Do I not care about the flowers? Is it just everyone having a good time? What really is most important to each couple, and figuring that out for yourself is gonna help you better know where to invest your budget as you go along in planning your wedding. I think there's definitely a kind of order or like a best practice order to planning your wedding. I usually start, you know, venue, caterer, because a lot of times that's the second highest, photo, video, if those are of importance to you and what you want. I think most really care about their photographer, but kind of leaving, as much as I love the design, I'm usually leaving the design part to the end, just because we have to get through the necessities and know what we're working with left over to be able to, you know, properly see like what can we do design wise, what can we do with the flowers, all that sort of stuff. But, you know, usually, you know, having catering is, you know, a given to some extent. So, yeah, but prioritizing, figuring out what are the 3 things that between you and your partner are most important to you guys, so that you can figure out where are the areas that we want to actually invest the majority of our budget within reason and market averages that we can. What are those? So I kind of urge you to have that discussion, whether it's just you thinking about it on your own, talking to your partner about what's most important, will definitely help you in the long run as you go through the process and be able to make the decisions that you are most happy with. Step number 4. So I had kind of earlier said that steps 1 and 2 kind of go hand in hand. Your guest list and then also setting your budget need to kind of happen simultaneously while you are also still looking for your wedding venue. But basically, once you have, you know, set your guest list, once you've set your budget, once you've figured out what is truly your 3 top priorities, then I think you are ready to book your wedding venue. Because you will have all of those other things that you need to consider kind of in mind when choosing a venue. You will be able to choose a venue that fits your budget versus spending, you know, half of your budget on the venue or, you know, that sort of thing. Just to be able to make the best decision for you and your planning and your budget and your overall goals for your wedding. Then step number 5, I kind of slightly also touched on this one too, but book the necessities. So that order that I was talking about that I think is kind of like a best practice in terms of how to start booking your wedding is, you know, if you don't have a wedding planner and you have a wedding coordinator and you are, you know, booking all the details and all the vendors for your wedding on your own, I would definitely recommend book your venue, book your caterer second. After that, I'd really focus on your photographer and your DJ or band, whoever that's going to be, simultaneously within those 4. You could be booking your wedding coordinator if you're not having a full planner or partial planner, but those would be the next ones. Then if you've got leftover and you are looking for your videographer, maybe you could start looking around and seeing what those rates cost and everything then. But that's when you'd also get into the design process and start booking your florist and, you know, dishware, all those sorts of decor rentals, linens, all that kind of stuff. Of course, like if, you know, a florist was one of your top 3 priorities, you might want to move that up the list a little bit. Maybe that comes before your DJ. You know, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, use it to best fit your priorities. But definitely I would recommend starting with venue, coordinator, photographer, and then kind of go by your priorities after that point. So my sixth and final step to jumpstart your wedding planning is the design part, which is my absolute favorite part of wedding planning. I love getting to put together all the colors and textures with your linens, dishware, all those sorts of things. I kind of feel like a lot of like the flowers and things like that are what sets the tone and style of your wedding. And I personally just love getting to be creative and artistic. So that's why I really like the design part of your wedding. But basically, once you've booked all of your necessity vendors, that's when you have a better idea of what you've got left in your budget to be putting into your design and flowers. And my kind of tip when it comes to design is really to try to use the necessities to dress up your wedding. So, you know, use your dishware and your napkins and your flowers to kind of lend to that design. Don't feel like you necessarily have to have a lot of things to fill space necessarily. Kind of think of like the necessities that you would want to have or that you would see if you were, you know, at like a fine dining restaurant or something along those lines. Like, what would they have on the tables? How do they decorate those tables? Like, you know, maybe what is the entranceway like? Like, do they have a cool looking sign? You know, functional kinds of things. And I think, yeah, that would be my advice on how to go about your design. But to kind of recap, so those 6 steps are, you know, putting your guest list pen to paper, because kind of without that, it's really hard to determine everything else. And then from there, you know, figuring out what your budget is and how to kind of allocate that budget. Do your research on, you know, what things cost in the market that you are planning on having your wedding in. From there, book your venue. Oh wait, I skipped one. Step 3, choose your priorities. Figure out what are your priorities for your wedding. What are the, you know, 3 top areas of your wedding that are most important to you that you want to invest. Once you have all that figured out, step 4 is officially booking and deciding on your venue. Step 5 would be to book all your necessity vendors, your caterer. You know, if your venue doesn't provide linens and you need those, that could fall under that. Your photographer, basically the key vendors that you need to make your wedding happen, and to be able to look back on your wedding and look back on those memories. Step 5 would be, then once you have all of your necessities booked, then you can move on to step 6, what I consider to be the most fun part of wedding planning, which is your wedding design. And, you know, at that point, you know what's left in your budget to be planning your wedding design. Of course, like if certain things are most important in your design, like flowers or like a certain backdrop, things like that, I think you could go ahead and maybe book earlier in the planning process. Maybe those are moved up to the necessities area for you. And then, you know that you'll have to figure out like different wiggle room and other areas in with other vendors. So yeah, those are my 6 steps that I highly recommend to help you jumpstart and kind of set forth a plan on how to plan your own wedding if you do not have a full wedding planner, partial planner, and are potentially only doing day of coordination. But I hope you found that all helpful, and I will link that blog that I mentioned earlier on down below. It lives on our lovely friends Flower Carts website, so I will link that down below. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the thumbs up button, and I will see you in a video very soon.